Come join me as we paint from my new series, Secret Garden Gate. This tutorial is sped up, otherwise we would be here for hours, but I hope this shows you how I build color and detail as I go. You can always slow down the video speed in your YouTube settings. I decided I wanted to start with the door first and just put a first layer of my turquoise down. I had pre-wet my door and now I'm just dropping in a soft watery layer. And as we go in this painting, we'll continue to build color and detail as we go, but we're going to keep our detail pretty soft. This French ochre is a new color for me, and I'm really loving it to age things, to kind of give it a subdued, faded color. And the difference between French ochre and just regular ochre that I can see is that the French ochre is a little more brown and less yellow, which really works well for making this look older and aged. Adding in a little of my Serpentine Green, very watery, just kind of giving that little look of that kind of green, mossy look to the door. I realized after starting the door that I forgot to put down my masking fluid. I'm just doing a little masking fluid where my flowers are going to be later on. I just take a really old brush, roll it in some soap that protects my brush from getting ruined and gummy, and I really only need just a smidgen of that masking fluid. In the PDF download of the line drawing, I don't have the roses mapped out for you, so I just kind of drew them in after the fact and just kind of decided where I wanted my roses, and I'm kind of figuring out some of that as I'm putting in my masking fluid. So if you are using the PDF line drawing, you just go ahead and put your roses where you want them to go and kind of make this painting your own. Now I'm just going to pre-wet all my stonework and brickwork, and I'm just going to put in some very watery, sporadic, I don't know if sporadic is the right word, but I'm going to be putting in some of that French ochre. So we want that stone and brick to look kind of aged. So this underpainting that we're doing here, this first color wash, is just going to be really soft, and it will kind of peek through a little bit as we build the detail of the stonework, but we just want this little base layer, tapping in a little of my Moonglow, a little bit of my burnt umber, and just take a little tissue and just tap out in a few little areas. When that dries, it will kind of make it look like it has texture. Kind of adding in a little of that mossy color. Kind of looks like a muddled mess at the moment, but trust me, this will pay off in the end. I like using my hairdryer in between layers to kind of speed up the process so I can just keep painting. Taking some of my burnt umber and my permanent red deep, kind of mixing a rusty brick color. And as I paint these bricks, I'm going to be doing little variations of this color wash because I don't want every brick to be exactly the same color. Some are going to be softer, some are going to have a little bit of that French ochre in it. And I use all sorts of size brushes on this painting. I just kind of pick and choose as I go what I'm comfortable using. Sometimes I'm using a bigger brush. All the brushes that I'm using are round brushes between sizes 1 and 8. So you just pick the paint brushes that are you're most comfortable with and that you can work on some of these small areas with. This painting is only a 5x7, so everything is pretty small. Now I'm going to start working on my stonework. I'm just doing some very soft variations of my Moonglow and my burnt umber. We don't want every stone to look exactly the same, deciding here and there where I want to mix my colors. Some areas darker, some areas softer. Now we're going to start the greenery. I'm using a little of my Serpentine Green and a little bit of my Azo Yellow. This is just my soft watery base layer. Now I'm just going to drop in my Sap Green. All our greenery here is going to be done wet on wet. We just kind of tap it in, let it spread where it wants to spread, still allowing some of that highlight of that softer green to peep through. But we'll just kind of keep tapping in some of that Sap Green. We've just created some depth really simply, just with these few colors. We can bring out the highlights, we can bring out some of the shadow in just a few easy steps. Now we're just going to spend a few moments adding in some shadow. I'm using my Moonglow, very watery, kind of helps create that depth that door is kind of set in there in that brick. I decided I wanted to age my door a little bit more and tone down some of that turquoise. So I used some titanium buff, my turquoise, and a little bit of my Moonglow to kind of make a soft mixture. I'm just adding it in a few places just to give that door more of an aged effect and a little more detail. Now I'm taking my hairdryer to kind of soften that drawing gum and using my eraser to kind of get off that masking fluid. Now we're going to start on our roses. I'm using a nice vibrant Quin rose. My first layer is going on very soft and watery, and we'll kind of tap in more color as we go. I just want them to look really soft, barely any detail. Just kind of tapping it in there. I almost feel like I'm scribbling on the paint, kind of like a scribbling motion like you would do with a pen. Now I'm taking a little more concentrated color and just tapping it in just a few areas. My roses are still wet, and it just gives a little more depth to those roses. Now we're going to work on some purple flowers. I'm using a Thalo purple and a Cobalt Violet. I had stuck a third purple on there, but decided I did not like it. It was a little too dark, so I didn't use it. I'm just adding a little bit of water onto my flowers, using some of that Cobalt Violet as my base layer, and then I'll just kind of tap in some of that Thalo purple. We're just keeping these flowers very simple, barely any detail. We're just doing a suggestion of flowers. Now I'm just mixing a little bit of my Quin rose and a little bit of that purple to make a deeper color, just to add a little more depth into those roses now that they're dry. Just picking a few of them here and there to add that color, but not all of them. We're just going to be putting a soft layer of grass in. We don't want our grass to be too detailed, but I'm using kind of some different green mixtures. This is my Sap Green, just putting those grass blades in really softly, kind of with a little bit bigger brush. I don't want them to be too detailed, just more like clumps of grass that are kind of growing wild. Creating a little more depth in the front with some darker sap green. I'm taking this fun little embossing tool that's used for embossing paper, but I'm just pressing it down on the paper, and that green just kind of soaks into those lines and makes them a little darker, gives it a nice grassy texture. It's kind of a fun way to add in some grass detail without it all being a paintbrush. This is kind of one of my new fun techniques that I learned that I really enjoy doing. Now I'm going to take my waterproof Micron pen, my 005. It's a very thin tip, and I'm just going to come in with a little bit of detail. I'm almost kind of scribbling. I'm just adding in little bits here and there. I don't want to outline everything. I'm just adding in a little more texture, a little more detail, and you don't have to do this process if you don't want to. I knew going into this painting that I was going to use my Micron pen at the end. I'm going to be printing these and creating them into greeting cards, and this little added detail really pops. It really helps my greeting cards to come to life. So I'm just kind of adding in my pen here and there. I don't want the pen to really pop out too much, so I'm going very lightly. I'm just barely scratching the surface of the paper with my pen. I wanted this to be a little more of an illustrative style. It's kind of becoming part of my signature style. If you want to do more of a traditional watercolor and not add this in, that's totally okay. But I really love doing this at the very end of the painting. Sometimes I'll add it actually in the beginning of the painting. And there you have it, your secret garden gate painting. I really hope you enjoyed painting with me and that you're giving this tutorial a try. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more tutorials like this one, and I'll see you next time.